The fog pressed against Blackthorn Manor like a living thing, swallowing the last ember of dusk. Inside the library, Sir Reginald Hawthorne lay slumped across his mahogany desk, a crystal tumbler shattered beside his outstretched hand. The scent of bitter almonds lingered, cyanide, unmistakable. Yet the door was locked from within, the windows bolted, the fireplace cold. No footprints marred the Persian rug. Only a single white camellia, freshly cut, rested upon his breast. Hercule Poirot, moustaches twitching, murmured, "Mon Dieu, death at the hour of deception." Chapter 1. The Camellia on the Corpse. The fog that evening was not merely weather, it was a conspirator. It slunk in from the Thames, thick as wet wool, and draped itself over Blackthorn Manor with the languid confidence of a thief who knows the household sleeps. The great Tudor pile, black beams, white plaster, chimneys like cathedral spires, stood half dissolved in the murk, its mullioned windows glowing amber against the dusk. Somewhere inside, a clock struck 6 with the solemn authority of a judge passing sentence. Hercule Poirot arrived in a Daimler that purred to a halt on the gravel sweep. The chauffeur opened the door with the reverence due a cardinal. Poirot emerged, patent leather shoes crunching, overcoat buttoned to the throat. Homburg tilted at precisely the angle that declared war on untidiness. His moustaches, those magnificent black crescents, bristled with anticipation. Inspector Japp was already on the steps, pipe clenched between teeth, face ruddy with cold and frustration. "About time, Poirot. Thought you'd never drag yourself from that blasted restaurant." Le Cygne Noir serves a soufflé au chocolat that would make a condemned man postpone his appointment with the gallows, Poirot replied, brushing a speck of lint from his lapel. "But duty, mon cher Japp, is the only sauce that never cloys." Japp snorted. "Sauce, eh? You'll need a stronger stomach for this. Sir Reginald Hawthorne, munitions king, war profiteer, and general old bastard, found dead in his library. Door locked, windows bolted, no sign of entry. Poison, the doctor says, cyanide." Poirot's eyes gleamed like polished jade. "Précisément. A locked room is not a puzzle. It is an invitation. Lead on." They crossed the threshold into a hall panelled in oak dark as dried blood. Suits of armour loomed like mute sentinels. A grandfather clock ticked with the ponderous heartbeat of centuries. A maid, cap askew, apron clutched in white-knuckled fists, bobbed a curtsy that nearly toppled her. "Library's this way, sir," she whispered, as though the house itself might overhear. The corridor smelled of beeswax, cigar smoke, and something sharper, bitter almonds drifting beneath the heavier scents, like a ghost at a banquet. Poirot inhaled, cataloguing, cyanide, potassium salt, almost certainly. Rapid, elegant, intimate. The library door stood ajar. Within, the scene was a tableau vivant of sudden death. Sir Reginald Hawthorne lay sprawled across his desk, head fallen sideways, one arm dangling, fingers brushing the Persian rug. His face, florid in life, was now the colour of putty, lips blue, eyes half open in mild surprise, as though death had been an uninvited guest who arrived early. A crystal tumbler lay shattered beside his hand. Amber liquid, whiskey, had soaked into the blotter, carrying with it the faint telltale reek of the poison. But it was the flower that arrested Poirot. A single white camellia, perfect, dew fresh, rested upon the dead man's breast like a medal bestowed by an ironic sovereign. Japp cleared his throat. "Local man, Dr. Constantine, pronounced him at 6:15. Servants heard nothing. Door was locked from the inside. Key still in the lock. Windows fastened with those old-fashioned Espagnolette bolts. Chimneys too narrow for a cat, let alone a murderer." Poirot did not answer at once. He moved with the deliberate grace of a dancer, circling the desk, noting the angle of the body, the position of the glass, the absence of struggle. The room was a gentleman's sanctum. Leather-bound books, a globe in a brass stand, a tantalus with 3 cut-glass decanters, a humidor of Cuban cigars. On the wall, a portrait of the deceased in his prime, hawk-nosed, imperious, eyes like chips of flint, glared down at his own corpse with what might have been disapproval. Poirot knelt, tweezers materializing from an inner pocket. He lifted the camellia by its stem. The petals were cool, the dew authentic. "Cut within the hour," he murmured. "The greenhouse, perhaps?" Yet Sir Reginald despised flowers. His first wife, La Pauvre, filled the house with them. After her death, he banished every bloom. "Pourquoi cette fleur ici?" Japp shrugged. "Someone's idea of a joke?" "Non, a signature." Poirot's gaze swept the room. The fire was dead, ashes cold. The rug bore no footprints save the faint indentations of the dead man's slippers. The key in the lock was brass, heavy, old. He tested the door. It shut with a solid clunk. "Observe," Poirot said, pointing to the keyhole. "No scratches, no sign of tampering. Yet the camellia is after death. Someone entered this room post-mortem." The door behind them opened with a gust of colder air. Mrs. Elara Hawthorne entered like a tragedy queen, black veil trembling, gloved hands clasped. She was 38, beautiful in the way of hothouse orchids, pale, perfect, faintly dangerous. Her eyes, violet and luminous, fixed on the corpse with an expression that might have been grief or calculation. "Reginald," she whispered, voice husky with unshed tears. "He was alive at 5:30. I brought him his post." She produced a bundle of letters tied with red ribbon. Then I retired to dress for dinner. Poirot bowed. "Madam, your sorrow is fragrant." He inhaled delicately. The scent of camellia clung to her. Gloves. Elara's fingers tightened on a lace handkerchief. Embroidered, he noted, with tiny camellias in silver thread. "He despised flowers," she said, echoing the maid's earlier words. "Called them frivolous corpses." A young man shouldered past her. Rupert Hawthorne, the nephew, 29, handsome in a dissipated way, eyes bloodshot, breath sour with brandy. "Uncle changed his will yesterday," he announced to the room at large. "Burned the old one in this grate. I saw the ashes." He gestured dramatically. Grey flakes fluttered up like guilty moths. Dr. Lysandra Vale followed, brisk, competent, 45, hair in a severe bun, spectacles glinting. She carried a black bag that clicked like a beetle. "Heart failure precipitated by cyanide inhalation," she declared. "No needle marks. The tumbler was a blind." Her pupils were pinpricks. Poirot filed away the detail. Colonel Arbuthnot stomped in last, ramrod straight, moustache waxed to bayonet points. "Reginald was a coward in 18, he barked. "I have letters proving he sold dud shells to the War Office. Blackmail, perhaps, but murder?" The room crackled with tension. Felicity Gray, the secretary, hovered in the doorway, 25, slight, auburn hair escaping its pins, fingers stained green with chlorophyll. "Sir Reginald was alive at 5:45, she said, voice trembling. "I brought his post. He was agitated. Said something about dusk and deception." Poirot's ears pricked. "Dusk and deception. Précisez, mademoiselle." She swallowed. "He received a telegram from Paris. I glanced at it. Camellia blooms at dusk. Trust no one." Japp scribbled furiously. Poirot knelt again, tweezers lifting something from beneath the camellia. A single golden thread, fine as spider silk. "From a lady's glove, ne sais pas? Yet madame's a silver." He held it to the light. It shimmered like a lie. Thunder growled outside. The chandelier flickered. Felicity's gaze darted to the desk, her face drained of colour. "The suicide note!" she gasped. "It was there, on the blotter. Forgive me, the dusk deceives. Now it's gone." Poirot rose slowly, eyes sweeping the suspects. The camellia seemed to pulse in his hand, white as a shroud. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said softly, "the little grey cells awaken. Someone in this room knows why a dead man wears a flower he hated, and why a locked door opens for a ghost." Lightning illuminated the windows. For an instant, every face was a mask of fear. Then darkness swallowed them again, and the camellia's scent grew stronger, as though the flower itself breathed. Somewhere in the house, a clock began to chime the quarter hour. Slow, deliberate, inevitable. Poirot smiled, a small, dangerous smile. "Allons-y, the game begins." But even as he spoke, the library door, locked moments before, swung inward with a sigh. On the threshold stood a figure cloaked in fog. Face, obscured by a veil of black lace. In gloved hands, it held another camellia, its petals stained crimson. The figure placed the flower on the rug, turned, and melted back into the corridor. Poirot was already moving, but by the time he reached the door, the hallway was empty. Only the echo of retreating footsteps and the faint mocking scent of camellia remained. Japp swore. "Who the devil?" Poirot knelt by the new flower. Beneath it, a card. Ink still wet. "The first was for the corpse. This one is for the detective. Dusk falls twice." The golden thread in Poirot's fingers seemed to tighten, a noose of silk. Outside, the fog pressed closer, and the clock struck 7. The hunt had only begun. Chapter 2. The vault beneath the violets Poirot descended the cellar stairs with the measured tread of a priest entering a crypt. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the mineral breath of stone and the faint sweet rot of forgotten wine. Japp's lantern swung, throwing shadows that capered like devils across the vaulted ceiling. "Mind the rats," Japp muttered. "Place hasn't been aired since the old king died." "Rats," Poirot replied, "are honest creatures. They announce themselves, unlike men." The cellar was a labyrinth of racks, bottles crusted with dust and cobwebs, labels peeling like old skin. At the far end, half hidden behind a tier of 1896 Chateau Margaux, stood a steel door, modern, incongruous, its surface gleaming dully in the lantern light. A combination lock, brass dial, 4 numerals. Japp produced a scrap of paper. "Felicity Gray says she saw Sir Reginald open it yesterday. Claims the code's his birthday backwards, 1899, so 99981. Poirot's gloved fingers hovered over the dial. Mademoiselle Gray is precise. Too precise, perhaps. He spun the numbers with delicate clicks. The lock yielded with a soft snick. The door swung inward on silent hinges. Inside, a chamber no larger than a confessional. Walls lined with ledgers bound in green leather, a small safe, and Poirot's breath caught, a single object on a velvet plinth. A will, fresh ink dated today. Japp whistled. "Disinheriting the nephew, I'll wager." Poirot lifted the document with tweezers. The parchment was heavy, watermark of a crowned lion. The handwriting, Reginald's spidery scrawl, left everything to Elara, with a codicil. "Should my wife remarry, the estate reverts to the Hawthorne Trust for Fallen Women." A final twist of the knife. But the ink was still tacky. Poirot touched it to his tongue. Metallic, chemical, sacré, written within the hour. Yet Sir Reginald has been dead since 6. Japp scratched his head. "Someone's having us on." "No, someone is directing us, like a conductor with a baton of fear." They emerged from the vault to find the household assembled in the morning room. a cavernous space of faded tapestries and sagging chintz. Rain lashed the French windows. The camellias in the conservatory beyond pressed their pale faces against the glass like prisoners. Elara Hawthorne sat enthroned in a high-backed chair. Veil lifted now, revealing cheekbones sharp as broken china. She poured tea with the serenity of a duchess at a funeral. Reginald was rewriting his will, she said, not looking up. Paranoia consumed him. He saw enemies in every shadow. Her cup rattled against the saucer, cyanide tremors. Poirot noted the tremor, the dilated pupils. Rupert Hawthorne paced like a caged leopard, brandy sloshing in a crystal tumbler. "That vault was my future," he snarled, lunging toward the will Poirot held. Colonel Arbuthnot caught his arm with a grip of iron. "Steady, lad," the colonel growled. "Murder's done. No profit in hysterics." Dr. Lysandra Vale stood by the fireplace, warming hands that did not need warming. Her medical bag lay open. Poirot glimpsed a row of vials, one missing. "Potassium cyanide," she said, anticipating the question. "For euthanizing lab rats. Perfectly legal." Her voice was steady, but her left eye twitched. A Morse code of guilt. Felicity Grey hovered near the door, twisting a camellia stem between green-stained fingers. "Sir Reginald received a telegram at 5:30, she whispered. "From Paris. I left it on his desk." She produced a crumpled scrap from her apron pocket. The message was typed on onion skin paper. "Camellia blooms at dusk. Trust no one." See Poirot's moustaches bristled. "C for camellia, or for conspirateur." He turned the paper to the light. The watermark, a tiny fleur-de-lis. Parisian stationery, postmarked 5:15 p.m., before death. Sent from the village post office 3 miles away. Jap scribbled. Someone knew he'd die at 6. Précisément. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The murderer did not merely kill, they announced the killing. A telegram is a fanfare. Elara set down her cup with a clink. Reginald had enemies. The war made him rich, Arbuthnot cut in. Dud shells, shoddy fuses. Boys died because of his greed. I have letters, which you attempted to sell back to him, Poirot finished. For how much, mon colonel? £50,000? Arbuthnot's face purpled. Blackmail is a harsh word. Truth is harsher, Poirot replied. Rupert laughed, a brittle sound. While you lot bicker, the real thief's laughing. That vault code, Felicity knew it. She's the only one besides Uncle who could open it. Felicity flushed crimson. I saw him use it once. He was distracted, talking about Dusk, about deception. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Dusk, the second time this word. Tell me, mademoiselle, what occurs at dusk in this house? She hesitated. The camellias. They open fully at twilight. Sir Reginald's first wife, Lady Beatrice, she bred them. White ones for purity. He banned them after she died. Said they mocked him. Elara's laugh was sharp. Beatrice poisoned herself with laudanum in this very room. Reginald found her at dusk, camellia in her hand. He never forgave the flower. Silence fell, thick as the fog outside. Poirot moved to the conservatory doors. The camellia house beyond was a jungle of green, blooms glowing like ghosts in the gloom. He opened the door. Humid air rolled out, heavy with perfume. Footprints marred the gravel path. Small, neat, a woman's. They led to a bed of white camellias, then vanished into the lawn. Jap knelt. Size 7, Felicity's. Felicity shook her head. I'm a 5. Those are Dr. Vale's boots. She was here at 6, pruning. Dr. Vale's composure cracked. I was checking the hothouse temperature. Reginald's heart required precise humidity, Poirot finished. Yet you carry pruning shears in your medical bag. She paled. For specimens. Poirot plucked a camellia, held it to his nose. Beneath the sweetness, a faint acrid trace. Bitter almonds! The poison was here in the flowers, sprayed perhaps. Inhaled as Sir Reginald napped at his desk. Elara rose, swaying. You accuse me? I was dressing for dinner. No, I accuse the hour. Dusk is the murderer's ally. It lowers light, lowers guard. Someone knew Sir Reginald's routine. Tea at 5, nap at 5:45, heart medication at 6, a perfect window. He turned to Felicity. The telegram. You say you left it on the desk. Yet it was found in the conservatory, crumpled. Why? I don't know. I went back at 5:50 to fetch my scissors. The desk was empty. Rupert sneered. Convenient. You forged the will, planted the telegram, framed my aunt. Enough! Arbuthnot bellowed. The vault! Who opened it after death? Poirot smiled, small and dangerous. The one who knew the combination and the significance of dusk. The one who left footprints that do not match their shoes. Lightning flashed. In that instant, every face was illuminated. Guilt, fear, calculation. Then darkness returned, and with it a sound. The soft snick of the vault door closing somewhere below. Japp swore. Someone's down there now. Poirot was already moving, lantern swinging. Vite, the camellia does not lie. But the gardener. The gardener is another matter. They reached the cellar. The vault door stood ajar. Inside, the plinth empty, the will gone. On the velvet, a single white camellia. Its petals were streaked with fresh blood. And beneath it, a golden thread tied in a perfect noose. The hunt had deepened. Chapter 3. The handkerchief in the great Poirot stood in the library's cavernous silence. The blood-streaked camellia from the vault now resting in a porcelain saucer on the mantel. The scent of it, sweet, cloying, edged with iron, mingled with the lingering bitterness of cyanide. Japp had stationed 2 constables at the cellar door. Their boots scuffed the flagstones like restless horses. First, the will vanishes, Japp growled. Now this, someone's playing us for fools. No, mon ami, someone is composing a symphony. Each note, telegram, flower, thread, must be played in order. Poirot's gaze drifted to the fireplace. The grate was cold, yet a faint warmth pulsed from the ashes, as though a memory of fire lingered. He knelt, poker in hand. The iron scraped softly, lifting a drift of grey. Beneath, a scrap of lace, scorched but intact. A handkerchief, monogrammed E.H. in delicate script. The fabric was fine lawn, embroidered with camellias in, Poirot held it to the lantern, golden thread. Japp whistled. Elara's? Madame's handkerchiefs are silver-threaded, Poirot murmured. This is, or gold, and observe, he pinched the corner. A crystalline residue glittered. Potassium cyanide, impregnated into the weave. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Elara Hawthorne appeared, veil discarded, face pale as the camellia itself. "What is this?" she demanded, voice trembling. Poirot rose. "Your monogram, madame, yet not your thread." She touched the lace with gloved fingers. "I have dozens. The laundry would not mistake gold for silver," Poirot finished. "And the scent, camellia oil, distilled, potent enough to mask the poison until too late." Rupert Hawthorne lounged against the doorframe, brandy flask glinting. "Felicity embroiders," he said lazily. "Golden thread for her little hobbies. She's always in the still room, distilling perfumes." Felicity Grey, summoned by a constable, entered with the air of a deer scenting wolves. Her apron bore fresh green stains. A pair of pruning shears protruded from her pocket. "I was in the greenhouse at 6, she said, chin high. "Pruning camellias for the funeral." Poirot's eyes flicked to the shears. The blades were clean. Too clean. "You distill oils, mademoiselle?" "For sachets," she replied. "Lady Beatrice's recipe. Camellia absolute." Sir Reginald forbade it, but she stopped, biting her lip. Dr. Lysandra Vale swept in, spectacles flashing. "The poison was inhaled," she declared. "Lungs congested with frothy edema. No residue in the stomach. The tumbler was a blind." Her voice was clinical, but her hands, Poirot noted, trembled as she opened her bag. A row of vials, digitalis, morphine, and an empty space where cyanide should have been. "Missing?" Poirot asked softly. "For lab rats," she repeated, but her gaze slid away. Colonel Arbuthnot stomped forward, boots ringing on the parquet. "Check the flue," he barked. "Servant saw smoke at 6:10. Someone was in the chimney." Poirot's moustaches twitched. "Précisément." He approached the fireplace, a cavern of blackened brick. The andirons were cold, but soot clung to the upper reaches like a secret. Japp handed him a lantern. Poirot climbed onto the hearth, coat-tails brushing the fender. The chimney narrowed, swiftly. A child might squeeze through, but no adult. Yet higher, his fingers brushed something smooth. A silk cord, fine as fishing line, tied to a small brass magnet. At its end, a key, the library key. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot descended, soot streaking his gloves. The door was locked from outside. The magnet drew the key up the flue, then dropped it into the lock, a conjurer's trick. Elara swayed, clutching the mantel. I was in my room. The maid can vouch. No, the maid saw you enter your room at 5:55, but not leave." Rupert laughed. "So the widow did it. Locked him in, poisoned him with her perfume." Silence. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. The handkerchief was placed after death. Sir Reginald's heart failed at 5:58. Dr. Vale's estimated time, the poison accelerated it, but did not cause it. Someone entered post-mortem to stage the scene. He held up the magnetic key. "This requires precision, and access to the roof. The chimney stack is exposed." Felicity whispered, "The gardener, old Mr. Thorne. He tends the flues and the camellias." Japp scribbled, "We'll have him in." But Poirot was already moving, lantern swinging. "First, the conservatory, the footprints in the gravel, size 7. Dr. Vale's boots." Vale flushed. "I was pruning at 6. The hothouse was stifling." "Yet your boots are clean," Poirot observed. "And the gravel path was wet. Mud should cling." She opened her mouth, closed it. In the conservatory, humidity wrapped them like a shroud. Camellias glowed in the gloom, their scent overpowering. Poirot knelt by the disturbed bed. The footprints were clear, heel, arch toe, then vanished into the lawn. But something glinted in the soil. A golden thimble. Felicity's breath hitched. "Mine! I lost it yesterday." Poirot turned it over. Inside, a speck of dried blood. "Sacré! The handkerchief was wrapped around the thimble, to protect the murderer's fingers from the poison." Rupert sneered. "So the secretary's the killer. She had the code, the thread, the flower." "No." Poirot's voice was soft, dangerous. "The footprints are planted, the thimble placed. Someone wishes us to suspect mademoiselle." He led them back to the library. The fireplace beckoned. Poirot inserted the poker again, deeper, a soft clunk. He withdrew a small tin box, rusted, wedged in the brickwork. Inside, a wax cylinder, the kind used in early dictaphones. Japp's eyes widened. "A recording?" Poirot carried it to the gramophone in the corner. The needle scratched, then Sir Reginald's voice, slurred, faint. "The camellia! Betrayal! Elara! You—" A woman's laugh, high and mocking. Then static. Felicity gasped. "That's my laugh!" "No!" Poirot rewound the cylinder. "Listen, the pitch is higher." Elara's voice, recorded separately, then spliced. A parlor trick. Ilara's face was ash. "I never—" "Someone imitated you," Poirot said. "Using the voice pipe in the flue. A speaking tube installed during Victorian renovations. Sound carries from the cellar to the library." Arbuthnot's moustache twitched. "I knew those pipes. Used them in the trenches for commands." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Précisément. The murderer spoke through the pipe, luring Sir Reginald to the fireplace. Then, poof, the handkerchief, soaked in cyanide and camellia oil, pressed to his face as he bent to listen. The magnet locked the door, the camellia placed as a signature." Japp scratched his head. "But the will in the vault was written after death, the ink still wet. Someone used Sir Reginald's hand. Rigor mortis had not set. A macabre puppet." Silence fell, broken only by the rain. Poirot gathered them in a semicircle. "The murderer is among us. They knew the combination, the voice pipe, the camellia's scent. They needed access to the roof, the cellar, the conservatory, and they left a trail of gold." He held up the thimble, the thread, the handkerchief. "But the little grey cells see a pattern. The footprints were made with Dr. Vale's boots, stolen from the scullery. The thimble planted, the laugh spliced, all to distract from the true killer." Ilara fainted, gracefully, into Arbuthnot's arms. Japp lunged for the door. "I'll have the gardener." But Poirot's hand restrained him. "Attendes. The gardener is a witness, not a killer. Observe." He pointed to the fireplace. Fresh soot had fallen. A single camellia petal, white and perfect, lay in the grate. And beneath it, a scrap of paper, singed but legible. "The second act begins at dawn. Trust the dusk." The clock struck 8. Somewhere in the house, a woman screamed. Poirot was already running. Chapter 4. The telegram from a dead man. The scream tore through Blackthorn Manor like a shard of glass. Poirot reached the conservatory first, Japp panting behind. The glass-house doors stood wide. Mist rolled out, thick with the perfume of camellias and something sharper. Fear. Felicity Grey knelt in the gravel path, hands pressed to her mouth. Before her lay Dr. Lysandra Vale, sprawled among the white blooms. Her throat was a red grin, pruning shears buried to the handles in the soft earth beside her. Blood soaked the petals, turning them the colour of rosé. Japp swore. "Second murder in 12 hours." Poirot knelt, careful not to disturb the scene. Vale's eyes were wide, pupils fixed, her spectacles lay cracked in the mud. Her right hand clutched a camellia, crushed in death. In her left, a scrap of onion skin paper, the Paris telegram now smeared with blood. Mon Dieu! Poirot lifted the paper with tweezers. The message was unchanged. Camellia blooms at dusk. Trust no one. See. But beneath, in fresh ink, the doctor knew too much. Ilara Hawthorne appeared in the doorway, face chalk white. I found her. I came for air. She was already. Her voice broke. Rupert Hawthorne pushed past, flask forgotten. Christ, the killer's still here. Colonel Arbuthnot's hand went to his service revolver. Lock the doors. No one leaves. Poirot rose slowly. No, the killer wants us confined, like rats in a trap. He turned to Felicity. You screamed. Why? She pointed a trembling finger. The telegram. It was on Sir Reginald's desk. I left it there at 5:30. Now it's here. Japp examined the body. Time of death. Recent. Blood still warm. Less than an hour. Poirot's gaze swept the conservatory. The gravel path was disturbed in a wide arc. Footprints, size 7 again, led from the body to the French doors, then vanished onto the lawn. A trail of blood droplets marked the route. Dr. Vale was pruning at 6, Poirot murmured. Yet her boots are clean. Someone wore them again to frame her posthumously. He knelt by the shears. The blades were smeared, but beneath the blood, a faint green residue, chlorophyll, and on the handle, a single golden thread caught in the rivet. Felicity gasped, "My thread! From the still room!" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The still room, where you distill camellia oil, and where Sir Reginald kept his heart medication." They moved as one to the manor's east wing. The still room was a chemist's dream. Copper alembics, glass retorts, shelves of dried petals. On the workbench, a bottle labelled Camellia Absolute, half empty. Beside it, a mortar with traces of white powder, potassium cyanide. Japp bagged the evidence. Vale's fingerprints will be all over this. No. Poirot lifted a ledger. Entries in Vale's precise hand. Patient RH. Digitalis reduced 50%. Placebo substituted 31135. Elara read over his shoulder. She was poisoning him slowly, for months. Or protecting him, Poirot countered. Digitalis overdose causes heart failure. Someone replaced the pills with sugar. Vale discovered it, Rupert sneered. So she blackmailed him, and someone silenced her. Arbuthnot's jaw tightened. I sent the telegram, from the village post office at 5:15, to scare Reginald into paying for my silence. I was in the pub till 7, witnesses. Poirot turned to Felicity. The greenhouse log. You signed in at 5:50. Ink smudged. Why? She flushed. I spilled water. The pen blotted. Poirot produced the log. The signature was crisp, too crisp, written after the murder to establish your presence. Felicity's eyes filled. I loved him. Sir Reginald promised to leave Elara. He gave me the vault code. Said at dusk, everything would change. Elara laughed a brittle sound. He promised everyone. The man was a spider. Poirot moved to the window. The lawn was a silver sheet under moonlight. The footprints ended at a stone bench. Beneath it, a woman's glove. Black kid leather. Monogrammed EH. Inside, a golden thimble. Elara stared. Not mine. My gloves are kid, yes, but lined with silk. These are unlined. Poirot turned the glove inside out. A faint stain. Cyanide crystals. The murderer wore your glove, madame, to leave your print on the shears. Japp scratched his head. So Elara killed Vale to silence her. Non? Poirot's voice was soft. Madame was in the drawing-room at 6:30 playing patience. The maid saw her, and the footprints are size 7. Elara is a 6. He gathered them in the library, the scene of the first crime. The fireplace still smelled of soot and secrets. Écoutez, the telegram was sent at 5:15. Sir Reginald died at 5:58. Dr. Vale was killed at 6:45. 3 acts, 1 playwright. He paced, hands clasped behind his back. Act 1, the locked room. Sir Reginald's heart fails naturally, placebo pills. The murderer enters via the chimney flue, using the magnetic key, places the camellia, the handkerchief, locks the door from outside, plants the suicide note. Act 2, the vault. The will is forged after death, using Reginald's hand. The ink is still wet when we find it. The telegram is moved to the conservatory to implicate Felicity. Act 3, Dr. Vale. She discovers the placebo substitution, confronts the killer in the greenhouse. The murderer uses her shears, her boots, Elara's glove. Leaves the telegram as a signature. Rupert interrupted. But who? We're all accounted for. Poirot smiled. Non, the gardener, Mr. Thorne. He tends the flues, the camellias, the roof. He has access to the still room, the cellar, the chimney. And he hated Sir Reginald. Felicity whispered, Thorne's sister was Lady Beatrice. She didn't poison herself. Reginald did, for the insurance. Thorne swore revenge. Japp nodded. We'll bring him in, but Poirot's hand restrained him. Attendes. Thorne is a witness, not a killer. Observe. He pointed to the fireplace. A fresh camellia lay in the grate. Beneath it, a wax cylinder, identical to the first. Poirot carried it to the gramophone, the needle scratched. Sir Reginald's voice, clearer now. "Thorn, you old fool! The camellias will outlive us both." Then a woman's voice, Ilara's. "The Dusk deception ends tonight." Ilara gasped. "That's not me!" "No," Poirot rewound. "The pitch is lower, a recording, spliced, made in the still room. The voice pipe carries sounds from the cellar to the library and to the conservatory." He turned to Arbuthnot. "You knew the pipes, mon colonel. From the trenches. You sent the telegram. You forged the will. You killed Vale when she discovered the placebos." Arbuthnot's hand went to his revolver. "Prove it." Poirot held up the glove. "Your prints are on the thimble. You wore Ilara's glove to frame her, but the golden thread, your regimental colours, the 14th Hussars." Arbuthnot lunged. Japp tackled him. The revolver clattered across the rug. Ilara screamed. "He forced me! Said he'd expose my affair if I didn't help." Poirot shook his head. "No, madam. You both wanted the estate. But the Dusk deception was Reginald's. He knew you plotted. He substituted his own pills, died on his terms. The camellias were his final joke." Japp handcuffed Arbuthnot. "Case closed." But Poirot's eyes were on the fireplace. Fresh soot had fallen. A single camellia petal lay in the grate, and beneath it, a scrap of paper. "The third act is dawn. The gardener waits." The clock struck 9. Somewhere outside, a spade struck earth. Chapter 5. The golden thread in the dark dawn crept over Blackthorn Manor like a thief, pale light seeping through the fog and staining the camellias the colour of old bone. The house was quiet, but not at peace. 2 bodies lay under sheets in the billiard room. The air carried the iron tang of blood and the cloying sweetness of flowers that refused to die. Poirot stood at the library window, watching the gardener's bent figure move among the beds. Old Mr. Thorne worked with the slow certainty of a man who had buried more than earth. In his gloved hand, a spade flashed. Each strike was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Japp joined him, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Arbuthnot's in the village lockup. Ilara's under guard. Case wrapped, eh?" Poirot's moustaches did not twitch. "No, a thread remains, golden, unbroken." He led Japp to the conservatory. The gravel path had been raked smooth overnight, but the blood-soaked earth beneath the camellias still glistened. Poirot knelt, fingers brushing the soil. A single golden thread caught the light, leading from the disturbed bed to a stone urn. He followed it, uncoiling the filament like Ariadne's clue. The thread ended at the urn's base. Beneath, a small tin box, identical to the one in the flue. Inside, another wax cylinder and a folded note. Japp read aloud. "The gardener plants truth at dawn. Listen." Poirot carried the cylinder to the gramophone. The needle hissed. Then Sir Reginald's voice, clear, mocking. "Thorn, you think camellias remember? They forget nothing. Neither do I." A pause. Then a woman's whisper. Felicity's. "He promised me the vault. At dusk." Static. A man's laugh. Arbuthnot's. Felicity, summoned from her room, listened with white lips. "That's not me. I never— No." Poirot stopped the cylinder. "Spliced again. 3 voices. 1 hand. The still room has a dictaphone. Someone recorded conversations, cut them like paper dolls." He turned to Thorne, who had been brought in, hat in gnarled hands. "You planted the camellias, monsieur. Every year, on Lady Beatrice's death. Why?" Thorne's eyes were winter ponds. "She was my sister. He poisoned her slow. Arsenic in her tea. Insurance paid his first factory. I waited 20 years. Japp bristled. "You killed him." "No." Thorne's voice was gravel. "I watched. He died natural. Heart gave out. I only left. The flower. Like always. Poirot nodded. The first camellia was yours, the rest imitations. He led them to the cellar. The vault door stood open. Inside, the plinth was bare, but the walls, Poirot ran a finger along the ledges. A panel slid aside, revealing a narrow shaft. A ladder descended into darkness. Mon Dieu! A priest's hole! Tudor! The chimney flue connects here. Japp shone his torch. The shaft was soot black, but fresh scratches marked the bricks. A silk cord dangled, magnet still attached. At the bottom, a woman's shoe, size 5, Felicity's. Felicity stared. I lost that yesterday, in the greenhouse. Poirot climbed down. The shaft opened into a forgotten wine cellar, bottles long turned to vinegar. On the floor, a camellia press, golden thread spooled beside it, and a ledger, Lady Beatrice's diary. He read aloud, Reginald laughs at my flowers, says they'll outlive me. Tonight, he adds something to my tea. I taste metal. The last entry, Dusk, the camellias open, I close. Elara, brought under guard, read with trembling hands. He killed her, and I married him. Rupert Hawthorne, released from questioning, laughed bitterly. So the old man staged his own death to frame us all? Précisément. Poirot's voice echoed in the shaft. Sir Reginald knew his heart failed. He substituted placebos himself, Dr. Vale's prescription, but his hand filled the bottle. He locked the door, lay at his desk, waited for dusk. The camellia in his buttonhole, Thorne's annual tribute, was already there. He died at 5:58. Natural. Then the murderer, Japp began, entered after. Poirot climbed back, diary in hand. Via the priest's hole. Used the magnetic key to lock from outside. Placed the handkerchief, prepared in advance. Forged the will using Reginald's dead hand, moved the telegram. Killed Vale when she found the placebo bottle. He turned to Arbuthnot, handcuffed but defiant. You and Elara planned it. She distracted with affairs, you blackmailed with letters. But Reginald anticipated. He burned the real will, interstate. The estate splits equally. Rupert inherits too. Rupert's face twisted. We killed for nothing? We? Poirot held up the golden thread. But the thread leads further. The footprints, size 7, were made with Vale's boots, stolen from the scullery. The thimble, Felicity's planted. The recordings spliced in the still room. All to distract from the true puppet master. He faced Thorne. You knew the priest's hole. You tended the camellias. You left the cylinders. Why? Thorne's eyes gleamed. Justice. He took Beatrice. I took his legacy, made his enemies dance. Japp lunged. You murdered Vale. No. Thorne stepped back. I watched. The colonel killed her. I only arranged the stage. Arbuthnot roared, straining against cuffs. Lies. The girl helped. Felicity slapped him. Hard. I loved him. He used me. Like he used everyone. Poirot raised a hand. Silence. The little grey cells see clearly. Arbuthnot killed Vale. She found the placebo bottle in his room, not Reginald's. He used the priest's hole, the cord, the boots. Elara provided the glove. Thorne provided the flowers, and the truth. He turned to Elara. You knew of the hole? She nodded, tears falling. Reginald showed me. A lover's secret. I told the colonel. Poirot gathered them in the library. Dawn light filtered through the windows, gilding the camellias on the desk. The Dusk deception was Reginald's. He died to ruin you all. Arbuthnot wanted revenge for the war. Elara wanted freedom. Thorne wanted justice. Felicity wanted love. Rupert wanted money. All danced to a dead man's tune. Japp scratched his head. So Thorne's innocent? No, he tampered with evidence. The cylinders are obstruction, but murder? None. Thorne smiled, faint. Let them hang. The camellias will bloom. Outside, the gardener's spade struck earth again. A final camellia, white and perfect, was planted at the manor's gate. Poirot watched from the window. Some debts outlive us, some truths take root. But as the police vans pulled away, a glint caught his eye. In the camellia bed, half buried, a golden thimble. Inside, a scrap of paper. The roots run deeper. Venice, 1936. The thread was not broken. Chapter 6. The second corpse at dawn. The manor had not slept. It had only held its breath. At 5:47 a.m., the first pale blade of light slipped between the library shutters and cut across the Persian rug like a scalpel. Hercule Poirot stood alone in the half-dark, coat buttoned to the throat, eyes fixed on the fireplace. The grate was cold, yet a ribbon of smoke, thin, deliberate, curled from the bricks and vanished into the flue. He did not move. He listened. Somewhere above, in the chimney's throat, a soft scrape, metal on stone. Then silence. Poirot's hand slid into his pocket and closed around the magnetic key he had taken from Arbuthnot the night before. He waited, thumb tracing the brass teeth, still warm. Footsteps on the stairs, Jap, heavy, urgent. The inspector burst in, face blotched with sleepless fury. Poirot! The vault, open again! The real will's gone, and there's another body! Poirot's moustaches did not stir. Précisément! The second act was never finished. They descended to the cellar. The priest's hole gaped like a wound. The ladder had been dragged into place. Jap's torch beam jittered across the wine racks and settled on the floor. Colonel Arbuthnot lay on his back, eyes wide to the darkness, throat opened ear to ear. The cut was surgical, one stroke, left to right. Blood had pooled and congealed into a black mirror. In his right hand, a camellia, white petals now crimson. In his left, the missing will, sliced diagonally, the two halves fluttering like broken wings. Jap swore. He was locked in the village cell. How the devil? Poirot knelt. The colonel's wrists bore no cuff marks. The skin was unmarked. Mon ami, he was never in the cell. The constable was bribed, £5 and a bottle of whiskey. Arbuthnot returned at 4, using the priest's hole. He came for the will. He lifted the torn document, ink still wet, the handwriting, Reginald's, but the date, today. To my beloved nephew Rupert, all real property. To Elara, the camellias. To Felicity Grey, the still room and its secrets. To Dr. Vale, my apologies. To Colonel Arbuthnot, nothing but dusk. Poirot's eyes gleed. The true will, written post-mortem, using the dead man's hand. But Arbuthnot discovered it first. Someone followed. Jap's torch swept the shaft. Fresh soot on the ladder rungs. A single boot print, size 7 again, on the bottom step. Thorn, Jap growled. The gardener's boots. Non. Poirot pointed to the print. The tread is new. Thorns are cracked with age. These are Vale's boots, stolen yesterday, returned tonight. They climbed back to the library. The gramophone waited, needle poised. Poirot placed the new cylinder, found beside Arbuthnot's body, onto the spindle. The voice that emerged was Arbuthnot's, hoarse with rage. The old bastard cheated us all. The will's a forgery. Reginald burned everything. Interstate. We split the crumbs. A woman's laugh, Elara's, then a third voice, soft, precise. Dusk falls twice, Colonel. Trust the camellias. The needle hissed into silence. Jap scratched his head. Who's the third voice? Poirot rewound the cylinder. Listen to the cadence, the diction, Felicity Grey. She recorded them separately, spliced them in the still room. She knew the priest's hole. Reginald showed her as he showed Elara. She knew the boots, the thread, the oil. They found Felicity in the conservatory, kneeling among the camellias, pruning shears in hand. Her apron was soaked with dew and something darker. She did not look up. "Mademoiselle." Poirot's voice was gentle. "The game is finished." She rose slowly. "He promised me the still room, a life." Then he laughed, said I was a child playing with sense. Her fingers tightened on the shears. I watched him die. Heart stopped at 5:58. I waited. Then I entered. Chimney, magnet, handkerchief. The camellia was already there. Thorn's gift. Japp stepped forward. "You killed Arbuthnot?" "Oui." Her voice was steady. "He came for the will. I followed. He found the real one. Interstate. He would have burned it. I could not let the estate split. The camellias are mine. Beatrice's legacy." She opened her hand. The golden thimble rolled across the gravel. Inside, a speck of dried blood. Arbuthnot's. Poirot nodded. "You used Vale's boots to plant footprints. Ilara's glove to frame her. Thorn's camellias to sign your work. The recordings to confuse. But the little grey cells see the pattern. The thread always led back to the still room. To you." Felicity smiled, small and sad. "Beatrice taught me. Poison is patient. It waits in the petals." She lunged with the shears. Japp caught her wrist. The blade clattered to the gravel. Ilara appeared in the doorway, face streaked with tears. "You used me, all of us." Felicity laughed, the sound of breaking glass. "He used us first. Dusk was his deception. I only finished the dance." Poirot watched as Japp cuffed her. "Mademoiselle, you killed for a garden, but camellias do not inherit. They only bloom." Outside, Thorn stood by the gate, spade in hand. He placed a final camellia on the gravel, white, unblooded. Poirot approached. "You knew." The old man nodded. "I planted the truth. Let them hang for it." "No." Poirot's voice was soft. "Justice is not revenge. You obstructed. You will answer." Thorn's eyes were ancient. "The camellias will outlive us all." The police van pulled away. Felicity stared through the window, face pressed to the glass. The camellias watched, silent. Poirot lit a cigarette, the match flaring like a small sun. "Mon ami, the Dusk deception was never Reginald's. It was the house, the flowers, the secrets rooted in the earth." Japp scratched his head. "Case closed?" Poirot exhaled smoke. "No, one thread remains." He opened his hand, the golden thimble, inside, a scrap of paper, folded small. "Venice, 1936, the camellia blooms again." The fog lifted, the camellias glowed, and somewhere a clock struck 6. Chapter 7. The Chimney's Confession. The library had become a mausoleum of light and shadow. Dawn had surrendered to a sullen, pewter noon. Rain hissed against the windows like 1,000 conspirators. 2 constables stood at the door, faces grey with fatigue. Japp paced, boots thudding on the rug. Felicity Grey sat handcuffed to a chair, eyes fixed on the camellias wilting in a vase. Ilara Hawthorne hovered near the fireplace, wrapped in a shawl the colour of old blood. Old Thorne leaned against the wall, spade across his shoulder like a rifle. Poirot stood at the centre, small, immaculate, deadly. In his gloved hand, the golden thimble, the torn will, the bloodied camellia from Arbuthnot's corpse. On the gramophone, the final wax cylinder still warm from the flue. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice soft as falling ash. "The little grey cells demand a reckoning. 3 murders, Sir Reginald, Dr. Vale, Colonel Arbuthnot, 1 locked room, 1 garden, 1 thread of gold. Écoutez." He placed the cylinder on the spindle. The needle descended. First, Reginald's voice, slurred with digitalis. "The camellias will bury you all." Then Felicity, whispering, "At dusk the vault opens." Arbuthnot snarling, "Burn the will, split the estate." Ilara laughing, He's already dead. Let the flowers take him. And, finally, thorn, gravel, and grief. Beatrice waits in the roots. The voices overlapped, spliced, a chorus of the damned. Poirot stopped the machine. 5 voices, 1 hand, the dictaphone in the still room. Recordings made over months. Conversations stolen, cut, rearranged, a symphony of lies. He turned to Felicity. You began it, mademoiselle. You loved Sir Reginald. He promised the still room, the camellias, a life. Then he laughed. You watched him die. Heart failure at 5:58. You entered via the priest's hole, placed the handkerchief, the camellia, locked the door with the magnet, but you did not kill. Felicity's chin lifted. I arranged. He died naturally. I only framed the frame. Japp growled. You killed Vale and Arbuthnot. No. Poirot's voice cut like crystal. Observe the timeline. Vale died at 6:45. Arbuthnot at 4:12 a.m. 2 killers, 1 plan. He faced Alara. You, madame, discovered the placebo pills. You told Arbuthnot. Together you forged the first will, disinheriting Rupert. You used the priest's hole, the boots, the glove. But Arbuthnot betrayed you. He found the true will, interstate. He would burn it, take everything. You followed him to the cellar. You slit his throat with Vale's scalpel, found in the still room. Alara's shawl slipped. Her hands were steady. He was a monster, like Reginald. They used us all. Poirot nodded. Oui, but the camellias were never yours. They belonged to Beatrice and to Thorn. The old gardener stepped forward. I planted the first camellia the day she died, every year on her grave. Reginald knew. He laughed, said flowers forget. I waited. Japp bristled. You obstructed justice. The cylinders, the footprints, truth, Thorn said. I left the cylinders for you, Monsieur Poirot, to show the rot. I planted the footprints with Vale's boots, stolen, returned. I left the thimble, the thread, to lead you to the still room, to Felicity. She was innocent of blood. Felicity's eyes filled. He promised me a garden. I only wanted to tend it. Poirot's gaze swept the room. The Dusk deception was collective. Reginald staged his death. Placebos, locked door, camellia in place. Felicity arranged the scene. Alara and Arbuthnot forged the will. Thorn exposed the truth. Dr. Vale discovered the placebos, died for it. Arbuthnot died for greed. Alara will hang for it, Japp finished. Alara laughed, a sound like breaking ice. Let the camellias have me. They've waited 20 years. Poirot turned to Thorn. You knew the priest's hole, the voice pipe, the chimney. You could have killed. Thorn's eyes were ancient. I buried my sister. That was enough. Silence fell, broken only by the rain. Poirot gathered the evidence, the thimble, the will, the cylinder. The case is closed. Alara Hawthorne, murder of Arbuthnot and Vale. Felicity Grey, obstruction, tampering. Thorn, obstruction. The camellias remain. Japp cuffed Alara. She did not resist. Felicity wept silently. Thorn picked up his spade. Outside the fog had lifted. The camellias glowed, white and pitiless. Poirot lit a cigarette, the match flaring like a small sun. Mon ami, the house itself was the killer. The flowers merely watched. But as the police van pulled away, a glint caught his eye. In the library grate, half buried in ash, a final camellia, white, unblooded. Beneath it, a scrap of paper singed but legible. The roots run to Venice, 1936. The camellia blooms eternal. Poirot's fingers closed around the petal. The thread was not broken. It had only changed gardens. Chapter 8. The Will That Never Was. The rain had stopped. A thin, reluctant sun climbed the sky and laid a pale wash across the library. The camellias in the vase had begun to brown at the edges. their perfume turning sour, like a lie left too long in the air. Poirot stood before the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, the torn will spread on the desk like a dissected bird. The halves did not match. One edge was ragged, the other clean, cut by a scalpel, not torn in rage. Japp entered with 2 constables and a tray of tea that no one would drink. Ilara's confessed to Arbuthnot and Vale. Felicity's admitted the staging. Thorne's in the kitchen, refusing counsel. We're done, Poirot. Poirot did not turn. No. We are at the intermission. The final act is the will itself. He lifted the 2 halves. The ink on the left was Reginald's spidery scrawl. The right, identical in pressure, slant, tremor. Observe, he said, holding them to the window. Watermark, Crowned Lion, 1935 paper, but the fibres different. The left half is from the vault ledger, the right, stationer's bond, forged separately, then joined. Japp frowned. So which is real? Poirot smiled, small and terrible. Neither. He rang the bell. The maid, cap askew, eyes red, entered. Sir, bring Mr. Thorne, and the household ledgers from 1915. Minutes later, Thorne shuffled in, spade left at the door. Poirot handed him the will. Read the codicil, monsieur. Thorne's lips moved. To my gardener, Elias Thorne, the camellia beds and greenhouse, in perpetuity. His voice cracked. Beatrice's beds. Poirot nodded. Written in Reginald's hand, before his death. But the rest, the bequests to Rupert, Ilara, Felicity, are your hand, Thorne. You imitated him. You cut the pages, spliced them. You planted the will in the vault. Thorne's eyes were winter ponds. He burned everything. Interstate. The estate would split. Lawyers, taxes, strangers in Beatrice's garden. I could not allow it. Japp's jaw dropped. You forged the true will. Oui. Poirot's voice was soft. Reginald died at 5:58. Heart failure. Felicity entered, staged the locked room. Ilara and Arbuthnot forged the first false will, disinheriting Rupert. Thorne discovered it, destroyed it, replaced it with his forgery, protecting the camellias. When Arbuthnot returned for the real will, none existed. Ilara killed him to silence him. Thorne left the cylinders to expose the rot. He turned to Ilara, cuffed but composed. You believed the estate was yours. You killed for a lie. Ilara laughed brittle. He promised me freedom, then left me camellias. Felicity whispered, I only wanted the stillroom, to distill her sense. Rupert Hawthorne, released from custody, stood in the doorway, face blotched with brandy and disbelief. So I inherit nothing. Interstate? Poirot nodded. Précisément. The estate divides equally. Rupert, Ilara, distant cousins. The camellias, Thorne's, by forgery turned truth. Thorne's eyes gleamed. Beatrice's garden, safe. Japp scratched his head. But the murders were for illusions, Poirot finished. Reginald staged his death to ruin his heirs. Felicity arranged the scene for love. Ilara and Arbuthnot killed for greed. Thorne forged for memory. Dr. Vale died for discovering the placebos. Arbuthnot died for discovering the truth. The camellias merely bloomed. Silence fell, thick as the fog outside. Poirot gathered the evidence, the thimble, the cylinder, the torn will. Ilara Hawthorne, murder, Felicity Grey, obstruction, Elias Thorne, forgery, obstruction, the house keeps its secrets. He turned to the fireplace. Fresh ash had fallen. A single camellia lay in the grate, white, perfect. Beneath it, a scrap of paper, edges singed. The camellia blooms eternal. Venice, 1936, the roots remember. Poirot's fingers closed around the petal. Japp cleared his throat. Case closed? Poirot exhaled. No, the will that never was is only the beginning. Outside, Thorne knelt in the camellia bed, planting a final bulb. The earth was dark. Rich, patient, the sun climbed higher. The camellias opened, white and pitiless. And somewhere, a clock struck noon. Chapter 9. The Gardener's Revenge. The sun had climbed to its zenith, but the light that fell across Blackthorn Manor was thin and reluctant, as though the sky itself mistrusted what it saw. The camellia beds glowed like fresh snow against the dark earth, and every bloom seemed to watch the house with a white, unblinking eye. Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace, overcoat buttoned despite the mild air, the final camellia in his gloved hand. Its stem was still dewed, cut only minutes before. Beneath the petal, the scrap of paper had been replaced by a single seed, small, hard, the colour of old bone. Jap emerged from the library, hat in hand, face flushed with the satisfaction of a case filed and forgotten. All sorted, Poirot? Elara to the assizes for the murders, Felicity for tampering, Thorn for the forgery, though the judge'll likely go soft. The camellias are his alibi and his sentence. The estates, interstate. Solicitors will carve it like a Christmas goose. We're done. Poirot did not answer at once. He turned the seed between thumb and forefinger. Non, mon ami, we are at the epilogue. The gardener has the last word. He led Jap down the gravel path to the greenhouse. The glass was steamed, the air inside humid and heavy with the scent of earth and petals. Elias Thorne knelt in the central bed, spade beside him, hands buried to the wrists in soil. A single camellia bulb lay in the hole he had prepared, larger than the seed Poirot held, wrapped in moss. Thorne did not look up. Beatrice's last hybrid, White Knight, took 20 years to perfect. Poirot crouched, coat-tails brushing the gravel. You planted more than flowers, monsieur. You planted truth. Thorne's fingers pressed the moss gently around the bulb. Reginald poisoned her slow. Arsenic in her tea, a grain at a time. Insurance paid for his first factory. I was her brother, her shadow. I watched him laugh at her grave. I waited. Jap shifted. You could have gone to the police. Thorne's laugh was dry as winter leaves. Police? They'd have buried it with her. No, I tended the camellias. Every year on her death day, I left one on his desk. He knew. He knew. Poirot placed the seed in Thorne's palm. And this? The heart of White Knight. Beatrice saved it before she died, said it would outlive us all. Thorne closed his fist around it. I planted the rest, the cylinders, the footprints, the thimble. I led you through the lie so you'd see the truth. Felicity Grey appeared in the doorway, wrists free now, face pale but composed. A constable hovered behind her. They're letting me go. Obstruction, but no blood. I only arranged the stage. She knelt beside Thorne. You used me. Thorne's eyes softened. You loved the flowers. Beatrice would have liked you. Poirot rose. The Dusk deception was never one man's. Reginald staged his death to ruin his heirs. Felicity staged the locked room for love. Elara and Arbuthnot killed for greed. You, Thorne, forged the will to save the garden. Dr. Vale died for discovering the placebos. Arbuthnot died for discovering the forgery. The camellias merely watched. Jap scratched his head. So Thorne's the hero? No. Poirot's voice was soft. He is the gardener. He cultivated justice. The law will decide the rest. Thorne stood, wiping soil from his hands. Let them take the house. The camellias stay. The roots are deeper than any deed. Rupert Hawthorne stumbled from the manor, brandy flask empty, face blotched with rage and defeat. Interstate! I get a quarter of nothing. The lawyers will bleed us dry. Elara followed, cuffed between two constables, veil discarded. Her eyes were dry. The camellias were all he ever loved. I was just the vase. The police van waited on the gravel. Felicity boarded first, then Elara. Thorne refused the van. He would walk to the village, spade over shoulder. Poirot watched them go. The camellias seemed to nod in the breeze. Japp lit his pipe. "You'll miss the train, Poirot." "No." Poirot opened his hand. The seed was gone. In its place, a tiny envelope sealed with wax. Inside, a train ticket. Venice, 1936, first class. And a note in Thorne's spidery hand. "The white knight blooms in the Giardino Segreto. Bring your little grey cells, the roots remember." Poirot smiled, small and dangerous. "Allons-y, the gardener has invited me to the next garden." He boarded the Daimler. The camellias watched the car disappear down the drive, white petals trembling in the wind. That night, Thorne planted the final bulb at the manor gate. He pressed the earth smooth, then placed the seed Poirot had given him, the heart of White Knight, into a small clay pot. He would carry it to Venice himself. The camellias closed at dusk, but their roots never slept. Chapter 10. Epilogue. The Little Grey Cells. The Orient Express slid through the night like a silver needle through black silk. Compartment 7 was dim, lit only by the green-shaded lamp above the table. Hercule Poirot sat with his back to the engine, coat folded, gloves aligned, a single white camellia in a crystal bud vase before him. The flower had travelled from Blackthorn Manor in a tin of damp moss. Its petals were still perfect, as though time itself hesitated to bruise them. Outside the window, the Alps rose and fell in moonlit silence. Inside, the only sound was the rhythmic heartbeat of steel on steel and the occasional sigh of the carriage. Poirot opened the envelope Thorne had given him. The train ticket to Venice was real. Compagnie Internationale des Wagons-Lits, berth reserved for 12th March 1936. Beneath it lay a second, smaller card, heavy cream stock, embossed with a tiny camellia. Giardino Segreto, Venezia. Mezzanotte, vieni solo. E.T. He turned the card over. On the reverse, in Thorne's cramped hand, "The White Knight has rooted. The Dusk deception travels. Bring the seed." Poirot slipped the card into his waistcoat pocket, beside the clay pot that held the heart seed of Beatrice's hybrid. He had not opened it since London. He did not need to. The scent of camellia drifted faintly through the compartment, as though the flower itself breathed. A soft knock. The door slid open. Captain Hastings, moustache trimmed, eyes bright with the old enthusiasm, stood on the threshold, ticket in hand. "Poirot! Fancy meeting you here. I was en route to Venice for a spot of golf. I thought I'd look you up. What's all this about a garden?" Poirot's smile was small, indulgent. "Mon cher Hastings, you arrive at the precise moment the curtain rises on Act 2. Sit, I will explain." Hastings settled opposite, legs stretched, notebook ready. Poirot began. Blackthorn Manor was never about a single murder. It was a garden of motives. Reginald Hawthorne poisoned his first wife for insurance, then spent 20 years fearing the camellias would remember. He staged his own death. Placebos, locked door, dusk, to ruin his heirs. Felicity arranged the locked room for love. Elara and Arbuthnot killed for greed. Thorne forged the will for memory. The flowers merely watched. Hastings scribbled. And now? Now the gardener has invited me to Venice. The White Knight, Beatrice's hybrid, has been smuggled out. Thorne travels ahead. The Giardino Segreto is a private island, owned by a recluse who buys rare camellias. Someone there intends to finish what Blackthorn began. The train lurched. The camellia trembled in its vase. Hastings glanced at it. Poison? No, memory. The camellia does not kill. It remembers. The compartment door opened again. A porter in blue livery bowed. "Signor Poirot, telegram." Poirot tipped him, slit the envelope. The message was typed on onion skin, the same paper as the Paris telegram. "The White Knight opens at midnight. Trust no one. The roots are deeper than Venice." See Hastings read over his shoulder. C for Camellia. Or for conspirateur. Poirot folded the telegram. The game resumes. The train whistle sounded, mournful across the mountains. Poirot lifted the bud vase, inhaled the flower's faint sweetness. "Mon ami, the little grey cells are never at rest. They cultivate order from chaos, petal by petal." Hastings grinned. "Jolly good. Shall I pack my revolver?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, pack your curiosity, and perhaps a trowel." The camellia glowed in the lamplight, white and pitiless. Somewhere ahead, Venice waited. Canals like black mirrors, palazzi heavy with secrets, a hidden garden where dusk fell twice. The Orient Express thundered on. The routes remembered.